Dr. Shoredita, Ms. Lourdes Portus, Yusek Bertales, and distinguished member of the PSSE board. Umagam, I'm sorry, Umagam. I'm still working on my Filipino, apologies for that. It is a pleasure to be here among researchers and a community, and to be part of a community of researchers in the Philippines. As I've been introduced, I'm a researcher myself, and my work is to very much nurture the community of researchers in the Philippines, and it is a pleasure, and I've been looking forward to be here today. In UNICEF, we believe that research on, for, and with children is core to policy making and programming. We think that it's essential to cultivate a learning community to promote ethical, inclusive, impactful research. That's why we are eager to partner with the community of researchers, and that's why we are partnering with the PSSA to establish the PCRN. We want to nurture that community that you all belong to of researchers on children, but also connect you to policymakers and make sure that this research in a dynamic countries like the Philippines is used. In the Philippines, like around the world, UNICEF plays a normative role, which is we have to monitor the realization of child rights as enshrined and ensure that international standards for children's rights are upheld, particularly in the UN Convention on Children's Rights. The CRC, the Convention on the Rights of Children, was ratified in the Philippines in 1990. That was 1 year after it was one of the first countries to ratify in the world, and it's ratified almost a country in the world. So, to play that normative role, what do we do as UNICEF? We continuously gather data and evidence to better understand the situation of children. And we do that through partnership with institutions like yours and with government institutions, civil society and others. We want to ensure that national policies and programming prioritize children's rights, and they are grounded in the reality faced by children and the views of children. So that's why the theme of this Congress is very important for us. We believe in the participation of children in decision making, and I'll come back to that later on. We believe that research should be grounded in the CRC, the Convention on the Right of the Child. And my presentation today will show how we are taking this approach. And children shouldn't be the subject of research only. They are right holders whose voice, dignity, agency must be respected. But let me deep dive now in the situation of children, which will be my keynote today. The Philippines is a very dynamic, has a very dynamic landscape for research. I've been 4 years in the Philippines. I'm amazed by the amount of data, evidence, and research that is being produced. Across my 4 years, I've been engaging with a range of partners in the country. So what we're doing as UNICEF globally, and in every country, we do, as I mentioned, a situation analysis of children to understand what are the reality of children. This is done every 5 years, but because the dynamic environment in the Philippines is so rich, we decided to move online, and we're the first UNICEF Philippines to have created a website that pool all the data. And my presentation today is just a snippet of what you can find on situationofchildren.org/ph, which I'll talk about a bit at the end, where you can find a lot of research. What I would like for you today, as we start this Congress, is not only to listen of what we've gathered, but also think about how your research on children can feed in that situation analysis, and how it's grounded on some of these child rights, and can help enrich. So we want that situation analysis platform, or we call it also CTAN, to be a community for a researcher and to be a platform to share knowledge and evidence. So let me start with the presentation. Before I start, we are all researchers and we know how important it is to start with definitions. So the CRC defines a child as below 18 years old. So all those below 18 are children. But as a matter of research, and we look at the child along the life cycle, and how we've created age group. And those age group are the first 1,000 days, so it starts from conception to the age of 2, and they have key challenges of brain development, health issues, care, practices. Then it goes to early childhood from 3 to 5, that are key years of brain development and caring of the child, followed by age group children that are 6 to 9 years old, and then we have adolescent, and as you see, adolescent go a little bit beyond childhood. It goes 1 year to 19 years old. One of the key things that I wanted to share, also great news, is that what we've been doing as UNICEF is partner with PSA, the Philippine Statistics Authority, and the government to create a statistical framework for children. So and this has just been approved last month by the PSA board, which is a framework that identifies agreed indicator for children. So we didn't have that. All children indicators, like over 100 indicators, were spread across government agency, collected through multiple chain of mechanism, from survey, from administrative data system, with a lot of gaps across. So what we've done is working with all government agencies to agree on the indicators that should be collected, have what mechanism, and agreed of the gaps, and how then working on the gaps. So that's an agreement of the government to say we will collect those indicators on children, and this is now available, so which is quite a breakthrough in gathering data for children. Let me first talk about demographics, because I'm not sure everyone is up to speed. We know that children comprise 36.5% of the population in the Philippines. This means 2 in every child, every Filipino is a child. That means 40 million children. But as you can see on this map, this is not the same everywhere. So when you look at BAM, almost half of the population of BAM are children. Bicol has 40%, over 40% of children, and Zamboanga Peninsula at 39.8%. So we see a lot of variation across the regional representation. NCR has the lowest proportion of children for the NCR population. However, if you look at the overall children population and the number of children in the Philippines, the higher number is in NCR. So this is just giving some context. And hopefully this will show, that was one of my key challenges with technology. They will come, but this is, as we all know, and all researchers, I hope you all kind of recognize, these are meant to be the age pyramids. And they are not coming. Yes, here we go. 1, 2, and 3. So the first one is 2020. The second one is 2030 and 2055. What do you notice? The first is a pyramid with a lot of children at the bottom. By 2030, we have fewer children, and then we have a mushroom, and we know what that means. As social scientists, we will know that that means a democratic shift, sorry. That means we are shifting and we need to get a demographic dividend. Because later on, the population will be aging. So we have a country where a large proportion is of working age. But then, as if you look at the Japanese one, it's all up. And so that means there would be a lot more older people and fewer young people. So we have to invest. The key message is invest of children, because they're going to be the ones supporting the future of the community. This is the time. We're not in a society, we're transforming in a society that has a lot of children to fewer children. So this is key. What we already also see is that nearly 4 in 10 children lives in cities. This is a different, growing urbanization in the Philippines, and so that's a major implication with the environment. And we'll come later when we look at climate impact and the environmental community in which they work. Another key important factor is almost 2% of the population, and that's an estimate. That's a key challenge that we have to understand how many children with disability lives in the country. But 2 million for a country of recently 114 million people, that's above 2 million children of living in disability. And we've done a recent study on the cost of raising a child with disability that highlighted that families with children with disability are facing significant higher costs to meet the basic needs of children. And these higher costs have impact on the family income, pushing them closer or sometimes down to poverty. So this is key to very much address the need of children with disability. So let me look, today I'll look at the child rights, and I'll try to go quickly through 5 lenses, through 5 dimensions of child right as defined by the Convention on the Rights of the Child. So let's start with survive and thrive, and this covers health and nutrition issues, and I'll go quickly through that. So first, a good news, and hopefully the graph will appear. But the good news is that we see progress in health. Anemia among pregnant and lactating women is going down, and you will see, hopefully, here we go. So anemia is going down. Vitamin A deficiency among pregnant women is going down as well. So that's good for mothers. Adolescent fertility and teenage pregnancy, less of adolescents having kids. This is good. Skilled health and facility-based delivery, which means mothers are delivering their babies in hospital or in healthcare center. That's better than at home, so there's more care for them. All these signs are good progress, and you see skill attendance going up. So all are great signs, but what we don't see is, sorry, can you just do the next one? Sorry. Could you move? Sorry, sometimes my team has done fun. Okay, so yes, to the next one, thank you. So what we don't see is that what we see is a stagnation of child mortality. And we look at child mortality in 3 types of mortality. Those under 5 years old, and then, so those, we have neonatal mortality, that's the first months of life, and then the infant mortality is the first year, if the chance of dying under the first year. So under 5 mortality is plateauing. You see, since 2008, we see little progress. We should see less children dying at an early age. And because we're seeing more skill attendance, we see this progress, but we don't see the progress there. So when we look at regions, this is a little bit, this is neonatal mortality, where we're breaking down. So that's within the first year of life, if they are, neonatal mortality, it's the first months, you see a lot of fluctuation across region, but it's still, infant mortality is within the first year. We see a lot of stagnating. The good news is the purple one, blue one, that you see going down, and I'll come to it in the next slide. This is where we see progress in BAM, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region of Muslim Mindanao. That's where, look at this, this is where we see much progress in the country. We have seen significant decrease across the 3 types of mortality and they are getting to the same level of the rest of the country. As we know, they were much higher. So this type of information, seeing skill attendance, like improvement in access, but child mortality not decreasing, gives us one information: quality. We think people are accessing services, but they still don't decrease. We don't see a decrease in the mortality. So it suggests a problem of the quality of services. Access is improving, but quality is not. So why children are dying? Most cause is infectious and parasite disease. So many of those are preventable through vaccines. And what we see, we see that in the country, overall vaccine coverage or basic antigen increased from 70 to 72%, but it's still below the 95% of herd immunity. So with vaccine, if 95% of the community is vaccinated, it will not spread across the country. But if that's below that, there is a chance, and we've seen polio outbreaks, measles outbreaks still happening in the Philippines. And that's because of the challenge of coverage of vaccines. So one of the things that we see is, again, we see difference in the country. Sorry, it's like one slide. So immunization, this is part of a work that we wanted to showcase to indicate some of the work that we will be publishing soon, and I think for all researchers is interesting, is that where we've tried to look at all indicators for children, this is for health, that we have at national level, and what we can go down is by region. One of the challenges in the country is having indicators at subnational level and local level. But looking at the indicators and trying to put them at par, so creating indexes. And one of the things that you see, balm for immunization is in the red at 9.9%. But what we see is that, and mortality is not the worst, so under 5 mortality is not the worst. So there is an area of research for you, and it's like where we see under 5 mortality being high, but access being high as well. So how come we should be seeing a link between that and better understanding the different intersection and the challenge at local level? So here is so 1 in 5 children have zero-dose children. Zero-dose children is that haven't been vaccinated at all. So we have 10% of the population, but in BAM, it's 6 out of 10, so 60% haven't been vaccinated. Another aspect of health that I wanted to touch upon, because that's a key area of we would want to see more research, is around mental health. It's a growing concern in the country. We have, we see that suicide ideation, that means children that have thought about suicide, has increased significantly. Of course, we've seen during COVID, and we all know that during COVID this was tough on all of us. And we've seen level of anxiety, and we have research that demonstrate that. It went down, but it's still higher than pre-pandemic, and it still remains an issue to be researched on and to better understand in the Philippine context. Looking at bottlenecks, so one of the things is not just looking at the situation, but what caused this lack of progress, or where we can progress, and that's also another area of research. For health, what we see is a varying level of knowledge and capacity, particularly at local level. We know in the decentralized level, this is local level health workers, local government units, capacity, it's still a major issue. Inadequate quality of services I mentioned. Also what we see is behavior. Social behavior change is becoming central. Understanding healthy behavior is a key to addressing those shifts. Supply chain, we still see too much out of stock of essential medicines and fragmented information system. Another aspect of health is, this survive and thrive, is nutrition. Stunting has long-term been an issue in the Philippines. And a stunted child is a child that is not the appropriate height for their age. So the growth of the height, especially at younger age, dictates the development, both the physical and cognitive underdevelopment of a child. This is critical for a country if it wants to address and build human capital, because it links to brain development, to like the capacity of a child to be an active member in society. The World Health Organization defined, and that's, you'll see in that graph, the very high, that's like the level defined by the World Health Organization. The orange is 30% is very high, high at 20% and 10%. The Philippines is still in the top 10 globally for stunting. It went down in around 2018, below very high, but we still see that it's high. We have seen much progress between 2021 and 2023, but we still, and this is from the National Nutrition Survey, it's still at 23.6%. And again, balm is lagging much behind, with 34.4% of children stunted. So much progress is needed. Another key issue of nutrition, quickly, one of the things that is interesting is 9 out of 10 children are able to eat. That means children eat. They have food every day on the table. It's not a food security as much issue. But 1 in 10 receive the minimal acceptable diet. That means they do not eat the right nutritious food. This it shows us that malnutrition is not about food security, but it's about poor diet. And we have a key issue of the food environment in which we are. Another key and last aspect of nutrition that we see as a growing concern in the Philippines is overweight and obesity, which is rapidly rising in the Philippines. So you see, it's like comparing to the stunting is not as high, but it is growing more and more. And according to the WHO, again, standard, and the global standard, it's got high. UNICEF just published a report globally that for the first time, childhood overweight and obesity has surpassed underweight of children. So globally, we have more children obese than children underweight. This is a major concern. And that drives by harmful food environment and not by personal choice. And I think as children, you know that like the food environment, like having healthy food in your everyday life can be a challenge in the Philippines. Breaking it down, overweight and obesity is more common in urban area among boys rather than girls, and among higher education. So stunting is a problem among poor, but overweight is among the richer part of the community. 82% of adolescents are insufficiently physically active as well. So what do we see at bottleneck for nutrition? So the food environment, as I mentioned, this is crucial. And understanding if you can do research on food environment and how to break the cycle of food environment. The high cost of healthy food, the easy availability of processed food, the limited access of fresh vegetable and protein is a challenge. A UNICEF study found that 1/3 of complementary baby food in the Philippines contain added sugar. This is a major issue. And like if children are fed sugar as infant, that's foster unhealthy craving and then lead to obesity later. So there is a whole cycle that we need to break, and research on this will help. We'll see also other issues, but I'll move on to learn, the next dimension. So education in brief, and we'll look at a few issues. First, For the first time, we have the ECDI, the Early Childhood Development Index. And this was collected as part of the Demographic and Health Survey, which was conducted in 2022. And soon, we're working with PSA, but in the coming months, they will start the data collection for NGHS 2025, which will have the data next year. And hopefully next year, we'll have updated data on all the health and nutrition indicator, but also on early childhood. What does that tell us? This indicator is looking at the development of the child, younger, early child, like 3 to 5, and to see if their cognitive, motor skills, all of this is on track. We see that 3/4 of children are on track, but still we have 1/4 that is not on track. That's based on a survey. We see regionally a lot of this, variation. Again, BARM is the lowest. And at 46.6%, much lower than other regions. What we also see in LEARN is that the access to the attendance. So it's again, we look at the issue of, do we see the realization, are they developmentally on track, but how are they accessing services to make sure that they are actively on track? What we see is low attendance. See how the attendance is across, and in region 9 and in BARM 0. So the challenge of we have evidence in the Philippines and globally that children who go to preschool do better once they are they enter primary school. We conducted a cohort study, so we followed children from early childhood to their grade 5 and demonstrated that it's changed, they perform much better at grade 5 if they had gone in early childhood. So access is crucial. When we look at school attendance overall, from grade 1 or kindergarten all the way to grade 12, we see that 6 to 12 is okay. It's 12 to 15 is okay, but 16 to 17, so we see a lot of out-of-school adolescents. And we see it particularly among boys, they have to go learning, and that's where we're trying to address this with alternative learning systems and other mechanisms to try to compensate for this loss. Quality is another concern. So here you have other elementary rate, I don't know, so you see the variation also in terms of years of the attendance. High attendance in elementary, junior high school is still high, kindergarten is varying, but the problem is senior high school, where it's much lower. How we can get that up. This is the result of the PISA. And the PISA is an international assessment where 15 years old are tested on reading, math, and science. So for kids in year 5, it's been done in 2018 and 2022, and it will be done again soon. One of the things that is troubling is that the average, if you look at this number here, oops, sorry. So this number here is lower are the number in the Philippines. ASEAN, you're all familiar with the ASEAN, is much in the region, the Southeast Asia region, we are below it, we are below the OECD, the global standard. So performance of the Filipino scored below the average, and with girls slightly better than boys, but all significantly behind. So we see that as a key pattern, again, access, but not quality. Children are not learning, or are they learning? Another key study is a Southeast Asia primary learning matrix. So that's among Southeast ASEAN countries that UNICEF is promoting. We've done in 2019, and we are about to release in later this year, or I think early next year, the next round. What it shows is that 83% of children, the second worst in the region, of children are in the primary level, and that's looking at primary, are not learning math. They're not performing to the level they're supposed to perform. And for reading, it's 90% of children are not able to read to the level they're supposed to read. So how come we are not achieving the learning outcome for children? What do we see as key bottleneck for education? So in early childhood and other, the lack of daycare center. You've seen low access still challenge, and that's where we need investment from local government units. And we are working and making national investment in policies, but how do we make it realized at local level? Shortage of quality teacher, poverty, perception of early childhood education is also an issue among family, and that would be an interesting area for research, and limited resources for children with disability. Moving on to the third area, and one of the important area of gap in research. This is protection, the right to be protected from violence, abuse, and exploitation, and harmful practices. What we see here is that 3 in 5, again from the DHS, DHS is a great source of findings, and it will be in the next DHS. We see that 3 in 5 children aged 1 to 14 have experienced violence. So children are like in sometimes violent environment, at home, at school, online, they are experiencing different level of violence. This data was coming right outside of COVID, like it was in 2022. It will be very interesting when we get the result of this new round of survey. Has that changed since that time? And can we tell that our children, do we still experience that violent environment? We see that 1 in 10 girls aged 15 to 19 experience physical and sexual violence. This is a very concerning statistic. No girls should be experiencing that, and we still see quite 10% of girls experiencing. Here, I want to show, and I think I have a colleague from that we've been working on a longitudinal cohort study of Filipino children. This is a very interesting research for all of you researchers, because it's been gathering data and following a group of 5,000 children, representing a sample of children across the country, from the age of 10, and it will be following them until the age of 25. It started in 2016, it's around the SDG. So starting at the age of 2016, and we'll finish at the end of the SDG in 2030. And we've been doing data collection every couple of years of all those children, and we're able to track for every child, what has been their performance, again, a whole range of indicators, including violence, and this is where it brings us some interesting data. It shows the violence experience among boys and girls, so orange is boys, red is girls, and we see physical violence is higher among boys. What we see is at the age of 10, in 2016, they experienced the highest, and then with the age, it comes down. So why at the age of 10, children are experiencing much more violence? And one of the other, what we're hoping to understand is, those children that experience violence at the age of 10, are they experiencing it throughout? Is it the same children that experience it? Is it different, and what is the impact of that violence on their school outcome, learning outcome, on their health, etc. So we see that also, you can see the two graphs, this one is by friends and peers. So it's higher by peers, and then the next one is by the parents, and that's lower, but they're still experiencing violence either by a peer or by a parent. This is emotionally, so the first one was physical violence, this is emotional violence. This is as important. We cannot really say physical is more important than emotional. We know how emotional violence can impact a child and can impact each of us so much in our well-being. So again, boys and girls, what we see is that girls are experiencing higher level of emotional violence, but it is also decreased, and this is less shift across the year, but that's by a parents, and this is by a classmate. So you see it's still emotional violence, still seems to be continuous, not less than physical. What we also see here is the case of the reported case of child abuse, and that's by the Child Protection Network. What we see is that the majority of cases is sexual abuse that get reported. A majority, a huge amount of cases. We see, like, between 2021 and 2024, there was 28,700 cases reported in the country. That's it. And we can see the trend is increasing. This is alarming. What we also see is, and maybe before that, I mentioned the PISA before. One study that was published later last year by PIDS that is important to note is around bullying in school, and showing that Philippines has the highest amount, rate of bullying among children in school. And that has a significant impact on learning outcome. They demonstrated, so I would recommend that you look at also that study. In terms of another issue in the Philippines, violence happens at home, at school I mentioned, but online. And that's one of the key issues that we've seen in the Philippines. You all have Facebook and social media on your phone, but that has a lot of online gaming. And as we see increased access, we see increased also violence. We estimate about 20% of internet using children and adolescents aged 12 to 17 are victims of grave online sexual abuse and exploitation. Another key element in protection is the what we call harmful practices. One is child marriage. We see that we still have, we had 73,000, sorry for so many numbers, 73,000 cases of child marriage in the Philippines. And it persists beyond the law. You remember that now there is a law in the Philippines that legal age of marriage at 18 and with parental consent. Girls outnumber of boys, and we see in different parts of the country where we see major challenges. On child labor, we see still 513,000, or in 2022 the data showed 828,000 children working and in hazardous work, which is also linked to the education challenge. So what are the key bottleneck to protection? Why are we not addressing this issue of violence? One of the key issues that we have addressed, and is the first one and is the main one that we are trying to address, is a fragmented child protection system. If you look at the way the government is structured, you have the police, you have it's issue-based and it's fragmented across with many different services rather than harmonized for a child and a parent and a caretaker to help a child to address this issue of violence. And so there is a social work, and it's very fragmented. And one of the things that we're trying to do is harmonize across the government and at local government level the child protection system. And we are about to start a modeling in 4 LGU to see how that integration can address all issues, and not addressing one issue at a time. They all call back to the child and how we have child protection services, and data remains another key issue. And that's where we need research. The fourth area is safe and sustainable environment. We talked about the weather, we talked about the typhoon. The Philippines is known for that. Climate. The Philippines is, as we know, the number 1 on the World Risk Index. It's a study done by Nature magazine found that youth in the Philippines reported the highest level of what they call eco-anxiety. This is important. We're talking about young people, and we're talking about participation. How do they feel? The feeling of children in the Philippines, and maybe children here can tell us, and I have a daughter, and it's just I see a lot of children also at our school, they all care about the environment, they are worried about their future, and that's a key issue. And in the Philippines, it's a key challenge because you are so vulnerable to climate, in multiple risk and multiple variability. And what we are trying to do is analyze, and another call for research for you is understanding the impact of climate on children. We will be soon in November releasing our climate landscape analysis for children, which is an analysis where we've gathered all intelligence that is available. This is not primary data research for you guys, but it's more like a compilation of what we know about the impact on children in the Philippines and trying to estimate it. What we see is that by 2030, national studies have shown that up to 11 million will be impacted by extreme weather, extreme heat. And we see school being closed because of heat in May. Up to 5 million people affected by flooding. Okay. And then typhoon, 6 million, 150,000 also sea level rise. What does that mean in terms of children? And that's where we're trying to quantify it and qualify it. And that's area of research. Is one, the access on essential services, school. How many, like you know, if you are a parent or a child, how many times your school have been closed because of climate, and then it end up like, you know, Agasa tried to forecast, etc., but it has impact on school. The estimation by PIDS is 32 days of school, days of school are impacted by climate, an average a year. That's huge. It's a month, over a month and a half of schooling that is lost. We have vector-borne disease. I mean, if you've seen cases of dengue in Quezon City increasing, we see a lot of different statistics. Water scarcity, of course the exposure to hazard. Typhoon come, we see regions that are impacted over and over, school destroyed, impact on essential access to essential services. But we have also that longitudinal cohort study shows us like impact on violence. We see increase of violence when they are like linked to climate. One of the things, and this is like a show of like CLAC, or climate landscape analysis for children. What we've done is we looked at exposure. This is the exposure. So we looked at all the different hazards, like, you know, typhoon, heat, etc. And based on the map and saying who are most affected. So you see that, like, you know, of course, the North be cold, and that region is the most affected because of typhoon. And there is, like, you know, statistical, there's a whole work. This one is a work that I was mentioning, what we call equity analysis, where we've transformed indexes on all the child rights I'm presenting into indexes, trying to measure them and to compare them, and showing which region children are faring the worst. And you see, non-surprising, you've heard me, BAM, BAM, BAM. BAM is where, like, children, but the Zamboanga Peninsula, where children are faring better, is NCR. When we overlay these two, and we say where the children are the most vulnerable to climate, our effort, Bicol region. That's where we say are the most vulnerable and like to multiple hazards, and where, I mean, all the country, and the thing is that the challenge with these maps, and we're overlaying so many indexes that you just don't see the granularity. But we can tell that the Bicol and NCR as well. Because it's like when we overlay the indicators, it shows that it is the most vulnerable to hazard. Another aspect to safe and sustainable environment, and I'll be soon done, is around water and sanitation. Water and sanitation is key to health outcome, to well-being, and what we've seen is we see a good performance in terms of basic access to drinking water, basic access to sanitation, and basic access to hygiene. So the lighter blue plus the dark blue means 90% of 90% in 2024. You see the progress between, this is 2015 and 2024. So in a 10-year, almost 9-year period, we've seen we've gone up. The challenge is like, when you see the dark blue, it's safely managed. Safely managed means that, you know, it's not access from bottle, it's access from, like you have, and then let me just make sure I get my, so basic water means less than 15 minutes away from an improved source, such as a well and a protected spring. So that means you have to go out, etc. But safely managed means that the water is accessible, available, and free from contamination. So that means it's like healthy, like because you can still have basic access, but it can still be contaminated. We have a big issue of water quality testing in the Philippines, and that's like an issue we're trying to address, but it's costly. But that would be a key challenge. The other one on sanitation and hygiene, and we see when we look at region, we still see issue in terms of hygiene. We can still see high rates of open defecation in Baum, for instance. In terms of school, briefly, we see that 85% of schools have access to at least basic sanitation, but only 47 have access to at least basic water. So you see water, 0 stars, so there's a star approach. I don't know if you are familiar. All your schools are rated from 0 to 3, and that's like the basic access. And we see that water is still an issue in schools. So what key issue? We see coordination around the government. There's not a single national agencies, and LGU is providing. I've heard of many stories in LGUs where there's challenges of establishing water system, etc., because different parts of the government are not agreeing. So this is like coordination is a key part, prioritization, and others. Data is still lacking. We have a key, but the CBMS, the community-based monitoring system, was conducted last year. We are working with PSA, and in 2 weeks we have the first CBMS conference, and we're hoping to get soon data from CBMS, which include water access. So we're hoping to have new numbers, which will be published on the situation website. Finally, another dimension is equitable opportunity in life, and I'll go quickly. You are geared to be an upper middle income country in a couple of years. The level, the Philippines is becoming richer and richer. But what we see is that we see issue of child poverty. I don't know, could you play up there? One of the key interesting, and for those that statisticians that have seen Hans Rosling, and check video of Hans Rosling is a man that made statistics exciting, I'm hoping to get. You can see those bubbles. So on the side, this is the rate of child poverty in the by region. What we see, the size of the bubble is the number of children that are poor. What we see is going down across the years from 2015, 2018 is going down, 2021, big jump, and 2023 stabilizing but going down. What we see also is again, the region BARM, you see how it dropped between 2018 and 2021. One of the things that we see is the peace dividend. In between 2018 and 2021, BARM was established. There is peace. There was no more conflict there, and we see being able to establish system and address child poverty. However, the bubble doesn't decrease, so there's still as many children that are living in poor family, but they're not increasing compared to the population. So, can you press next, please? Yeah. So this is a different slide. Social insurance, we see that eligible children for 4P is increasing. There is good numbers. We have 8.7 million. Social protection, I'm not going to emphasize this is one of the things that I wanted to look at. Also, we look at through these sectors is how much the government is putting for social sector, how much the government is putting for children. And that's across looking at health budget here, education, and social protection, those key sectors. What we see is that you see the red line is what the global standard of how much a government, the percentage of the budget of the government should be put for health and then for education. So for education, we have reached the sector. So the government is putting the money. that it's meant to do. Health is still below, and social protection. So we have reached, the government is making the investment in terms of number, how much money. One of the challenges, how that money is being spent, and that's one of the key. Are they able to spend the money adequately and to the needs? So that's what we're working. And we have key bottlenecks as well, which is like a key, again, the local capacity. I go to the final one, and I'm almost done, so it's quite long. In terms of participation right, this is key, and I think this is asking the children more than me presenting here what we see. We have a few indicators. We have good civil registration, but it's still remaining 5–6% of the population are still not registered. Still the access to internet. One of the things that here I'm not. Child participation is still an issue that we want to learn more about. We're doing a lot of participation. One of an area I was in meeting recently and with government, and what we need to better understand is the structure for participation at community level. You have, I'm not an expert, I know that there's the SK, there's the YCA, the youth group, how they all connected, how do this organization work and where it's working, what is the combination to be able to strengthen, because sometimes it's a lot of different mechanisms, but how this is bringing through meaningful participation and not autocratic states. I wanted to leave you with one of the last data point, and that's from the longitudinal cohort study. It's showing like we've been collecting happiness and how across the year how those children are happy. Great news, they're happy. But we know that happiness for a child varies from day to day, and if you ask him today, are you happy, or tomorrow, that might vary. But still, across the years, it's high. What is most interesting is why are you happy or why are you not? What makes you unhappy? And the happiness, so this is the revision for happiness. And if you look online, and I don't know if many researchers knows, there is a global research that started in the United States that looked at happiness at a core. It was started over 100 years ago, and of course 100 years ago was just men that we interviewed, but now there are women in there. But it's looking at like, you know, asking a whole range of indicators of each people from health and everything. And they identified one factor that we could resonate here, that influence happiness. It's connection with others. And what we see is what makes most happy, like the yellow part that are higher, and you see going up, it's being with family, being with peer and friends and classmates. And this is one of the key things that we need to, how do we create communities? What do we, and enrich communities, because we see in this day and age of virtual, or like we see urbanization, how that may impact the level of happiness and connection. The level, the reason for unhappiness relates to what on the dimension that I presented before. It's violence. And what you see is it's about being scolded and bullied. Again, we see the trend as for violence. It's going down from the age 10 to the age of 18. Conflict with peer is one of the key factors that impact children. So all this data, and I hope I didn't lose you, there's a lot of data out there. It's all in the situationofchildren.org/ph website. You can access it. You have over 100 indicators there across 7 areas. We have 200 documents, and I know we're missing a lot of your research there. We want it to be a platform to show, to have research around children available. You get maps. We will be publishing there the climate landscape for children. We will have, you also can access the highlight. So each year we update, so one document if you want that presentation in one document. Also when we launch the CITAN site, we had an event where my boss chaos, presented in the same format, and you can, if you don't want to listen to my presentation, but I have snippet around each of those rights, that presentation, showing that was last year, so data have been updated, and we hope in that rich environment next year, DHS data, CBMS data, all these data points will give us a new picture and a new opportunity to do some research. I want to also highlight the longitudinal cohort study, which I mentioned. All that data as researcher is open data. You can request access to data. There's a lot of data points and a lot of dimension that can be, and we are looking for help to do that research. I always see, like whenever I see a PhD student, I say, that's a gold mine. You don't have to do primary data collection. What you have to do is do the analysis, so use it and come to us and share your. We have also Safer Kids PH of online sexual abuse and exploitation, a lot of data that was collected. So with that, it's a pleasure for me, and I'm looking forward through these 2.5 days to now listen to you as you've listened to me, and to hear all your research and learn and bring back to my colleague. Tomorrow, some of my colleagues will be coming and sharing more of the research that we are doing, and we're hoping that we can build a research community and really understand better the situation of children, better understand the life, have the views of children to be able to improve and go towards the realization of child rights in the Philippines. Thank you very much.